Racial disparities have long been a national concern in the United States. People of color continue to be incarcerated, sentenced to death, and policed at far greater rates than their white counterparts. Studies show that this could be an unintentional issue, yet nothing is done. To better explain, we explore the factors that likely contribute to these disparities. To begin, we start by looking at racial targeting or profiling. Racial targeting profiling is a law officer's reliance on race, ethnicity, color, or national origin to choose which people to target for law enforcement action. Racial profiling leads to unreasonable suspicion. Unreasonable suspicion is when a law enforcement officer conducts a stop based on the belief that the person's race, ethnicity, color, or national origin raises the likelihood that he or she is committing, will commit, or has committed a crime. Example: black men or women walking in a predominantly white neighborhood is likely to be stopped and questioned by a white officer. Racial profiling also often leads to unequal enforcement. Unequal enforcement is when a law enforcement officer sees a person committing a relatively minor violation, like jaywalking or failure to signal, and stops that person even though they wouldn't have stopped a person of different race or ethnicity for the same violation. These stops are pretextual and violate the 14th Amendment, which is prohibition of intentional discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, color, or national origin. Unequal enforcement contributes greatly to the disparities in jail and prison system. Example, in 2016 in Louisiana, black people were 2.9 times as likely to be arrested for marijuana than whites. Even though the federal survey data shows that black adults are less likely than whites to use marijuana in the course of their lifetime. After exploring racial profiling, I looked at representation by the legal system. Lack of adequate legal representation leads to harsher criminal punishments. Most black and minorities do not have the finances to pay for adequate legal representation, so they are appointed legal counsel. And court-appointed counsel are usually laden with high or heavy caseloads and little resources to adequately represent individuals. That is the case in all races. However, the speech is regarding how that contributes to blacks. The lack of adequate legal representation often leads to harsher sentences as well. And knowing that there are gray areas within representation, we further explore implied biases. Excuse me. Implied biases are attitudes and or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. Example of a stereotype: black men are dangerous, drug-dealing thugs. Or even, as we heard from our current president, Mexicans are rapists. Implied biased decisions at all stages of the justice process disadvantages blacks and minorities. Studies have found that implied biases lead to black and minorities being more likely to be stopped by the police, detained, charged with a more serious crime, and even sentenced more harsh than white counterparts. In conclusion, it is very clear that there are many racial disparities within the criminal justice system. All people of color are targets. However, blacks are targets on a far greater rate. We see over and over many examples of this treatment, yet nothing really changes. We are tired of it and deserve better. America is the greatest country in the world and should reflect just that.